After Game Freak did a pretty good job at hiding Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's dirty laundry from the general public, it didn't take very long for fans to discover some hilariously underwhelming imagery from the games. But as disappointed as you may or may not be in the lack of effort in the visuals of these games, the reality is that Game Freak's just gonna keep getting away with it now and many other times in the future, and if you give me a couple minutes, I'll explain why.
Cameron, all one word. Cameron, danger. Oh no, it never fails. He'll take the clues and find the where's and why's and who's. Cameron, all one word. Cameron, danger. Cameron.
Okay, so when I say that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are low-effort games, I'm not necessarily saying that they're bad per se, and I'm not even saying that the people who actually worked on them weren't trying while they were on the clock. In fact, I'd actually bet money that they were trying their goddamnedest to get as much done with them as possible within the deadlines. But like, that's kind of the problem here. Pokemon games have pretty much been on a schedule for decades now, which used to not really be a problem when the franchise was in 2D on handheld devices with smaller screens where you can get away with a lot more, but despite things being a lot more complicated on a hybrid console, the higher-ups at Game Freak just kinda expect the developers to keep the same pace up, which is why we've got, well, this. So if Game Freak were to spend a little more time on these games before actually releasing them, they could easily look as good as the biggest gaming franchise in the world should, but like, with each of these games selling millions and millions of copies guaranteed, delays could cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars, so at the risk of getting my ass kicked in public, I can't say that I blame them for not wanting to slow the schedule down. Don't get me wrong though, I'm not saying it isn't shameful for Switch games of a franchise as massive as Pokemon to look like they can run on the 3DS though. Like sure, the Switch is way underpowered compared to the Series X and PS5, but there's tons of other games with a fraction of the budget and profit margin that look assloads better than Pokemon. Hell, even Little Town Hero looks better, and that game was made by Game Freak themselves, so using the Switch's hardware limitations as an excuse just doesn't work. I mean, no one's expecting Pokemon to look like God of War Ragnarok, but it'd still be nice if trees didn't look like they came from a 64 game, you know? But if you're not gonna delay these games and give them more polish, then what else can you do? Well, the obvious answer is to simply hire more people, you dingus. Apparently, it took about 400 people to make Sword and Shield on the Switch and about 300 people to make God of War on the PS4, so I'm sure you might say that they already had enough people, but the difference is that God of War had a lot more time put into it on top of the already big team, whereas Pokemon Sword and Shield came out in 2019 after Pokemon Let's Go's Pikachu and Eevee came out in 2018, which came out after Ultra Sun and Moon in 2017, which came out after regular Sun and Moon in 2016, so yeah, with games being cranked out this fast, it shouldn't really be all that surprising that the quality's so mediocre with Scarlet and Violet. Like, I'm sure the actual gameplay is still fun since the Pokemon formula is pretty easy to pull off at this point, and at the end of the day, the graphics should definitely be the last priority when it comes to rushing a product out. I mean, you shouldn't want to rush a product out, but if you have to, then that kind of is the last thing you should be worried about, especially for a franchise like Pokemon. Still though, the visuals of Scarlet and Violet really shouldn't be acceptable, but like, the thing is that everybody just kinda goes ahead and accepts them anyway. Like, sure, everyone's blowing a gasket, but at the end of the day, if you're buying the game, then you're actively admitting, meh, the graphics really aren't that big of a deal to me. And on top of that, you're also admitting that the game's literally irresistible to you. Man, remember how miserably the boycott Sword and Shield movement ended up? Yeah, as we all know, those games became the best selling in the entire franchise, because despite how passionate you might see a few thousand people are about something on the internet, it really doesn't mean all that much when even more people than ever just keep buying the products in question, especially when most of the people who complain the loudest are a part of the record-breaking sales.
Game Freak is lazy. Game Freak is a lazy company. A company that is lazy. They are a lazy company when it comes to their video games. Game Freak has just been extremely lazy with this. There's huge problems with this game. Game Freak, you're lazy. You are lazy, lazy, lazy. And I don't even want to buy this game. I don't even want, because all I'm going to be doing is supporting you. And I don't even want to buy this game.
I might though, I might.
I probably will buy it. I'll probably check it out for myself, but it's a damn shame.
Not to pat myself on the back or anything, but I'm pretty sure I'm the only person who actually stuck to my guns and never ended up getting Sword and Shield, specifically because of the lack of a national dex, and even though I didn't make any difference whatsoever, I still feel pretty good about it, because despite the record-breaking sales, the fact remains that Sword and Shield would have been even bigger had Game Freak put a little more effort into those games, but unfortunately, most people are probably never going to stop buying Pokemon games, and until that happens, Game Freak's never going to find themselves in a position where they're forced to change. Don't get me wrong though, even if you do cave and buy lazy Pokemon games, you still have every right to roast Game Freak and complain about them online, just like you can complain about food or anything else not being as good as it could be, but my point is that if enough people are still buying these games to break records, then the fact is that there's zero reason why Game Freak has to change. I mean, sure, it'd be really nice if Game Freak spent a little extra money to spruce the next entries up, and honestly, I do think this would lead to more sales, so if I were in charge, I'd definitely do it, but ultimately, it's really just something that would be nice. Granted, Nintendo's done plenty of things over the years with no other incentives than it'd be nice. I mean, they used to repair Famicoms for free for years after they were discontinued, and they even held off on releasing the original DS till they had a prototype ready that could still work after being dropped 10 times. So, I mean, sometimes doing things without any immediate payoff's actually better long-term business, even for big corporations, so again, I think Game Freak should put more effort into their Pokemon games. It says delaying the schedule of when to crank these games out would leave 8 figures on the table, then it looks like hiring more people is the only way to accomplish that, which I doubt would cost 8 figures to do. Like, sure, there aren't enough people boycotting these games to make this necessary, but ignoring this quality problem could potentially lead to more people giving up on the franchise eventually. And if that happens, then it'd be a lot harder to get them to come back than it would be to just keep everybody around now. If you ask me, though, I don't think any Pokemon fans are going anywhere for a while, though, so who knows if Game Freak's actually going to change and put more effort into these games, but if you ask me, my gut says that we aren't going to see any significant changes, and I also don't think anyone's got the grapefruits to quit the franchise, although I could be wrong about that. I guess we'll see. As far as whether or not I'm gonna buy Scarlet or Violet, though, I'm gonna say that I'll probably skip them unless the National Dex comes back, even if it's via DLC patch later on, but honestly, I don't really care if everyone else wants to just go ahead and buy them anyway. I mean, I totally get the classic simple fun of playing a new Pokemon game, and personally, the graphical shortcomings aren't really that much of a deal breaker for me anyway, since I'm always the person who's talking about how graphics are less important now than ever before. But really, there's just so many games from the past and present that I'm trying to play as it is that if any new releases give me any reason to skip them at all, then I'm gonna go ahead and do it, especially if I can get some bonus moral high ground points that I can pat myself on the back over. But if you don't want these moral high ground points for yourself, then that's perfectly okay with me. I still think you can complain. I just don't think that your complaints are gonna mean as much as they would if you'd skip these games. And until more people do start skipping Pokemon games, and Game Freak's gonna absolutely keep getting away with phoning it in and cranking more of them out. Anyway, that's all for today, but if you got a kick out of my incoherent rambling and disturbing imagery, though, then you should check out this video I made on the history of arrogant video game consoles, but if you'll excuse me, though, I gotta go feed my uncle's wife. Later!